Welcome to Conversations with Dr Libby. It is such a joy to be here and to bring these conversations to life. I have wanted to do this for such a long time. There are 3 pillars to my work: biochemistry, nutrition, and emotions, or you could say mindset. So I look at absolutely everything through those 3 lenses, and through these conversations, we're going to apply those lenses to lots of different topics. But for this first series, it's all about iron. Sometimes these conversations will simply be me having a chat with you, and then other times I'll invite other people who are experts in their fields onto the couch to have what I hope are some really insightful conversations that bring immense benefits to your world. But either way, I hope these conversations deepen your appreciation of your extraordinary earth suit, because after all, we look after what we care about. Hi there, and welcome to Conversations with Dr Libby. Thank you so much for joining me for this very special episode where we will be examining particularly women who care so much about their health. They're so incredibly wellness aware, and yet they might just be missing a couple of little factors that could make such a difference to how they feel and function on a day-to-day basis. Obviously, as you already know, I'm obsessed with iron deficiency and encouraging people to find out if they are deficient and correcting any deficiency they find if they are. So, of course, there'll be a focus on iron in these iron conversations. But to bring some of these themes to life about strength and resilience and helping wellness-aware women to better take care of themselves, I'm incredibly privileged to be sitting here today with beautiful Kirsten King from Fluidform Pilates, the founder of Fluidform Pilates. So welcome, Kirsten. Thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you so much for having me.
So looking forward to this conversation. I think there'll be so many educational and really important points we bring to life that hopefully make a real practical difference in women's lives. So thank you.
My pleasure.
So will we open by letting the listeners know about Fluidform and how you came to create it? And
Yeah, sure.
I would love to hear its points of difference. I know you care very much about functional movement and helping people, to live with more flexibility and strength to really optimize their health into the future. So I'd love to hear more about Fluidform and your journey.
Yeah, thank you. Well, Fluidform was created, I guess, to help people. I always say if my legacy is that I've helped more people, live longer in a better way, free of pain, then I'll be so happy. So I guess fundamentally that's been always what I've wanted to do. I discovered Pilates through an injury myself over 26 years ago. So a long time. And it wasn't really a thing back then. It was more a type of exercise done by a physiotherapist. There wasn't many studios. But I fell in love with it. I recovered from a knee injury, and I then decided that I wanted to learn more about it. And I guess Pilates was started by Joseph Pilates, a man, and it was to help injured soldiers. So it really does come from a rehabilitation point of view, which I really like. So I started my studios back in 2013, and really we weren't able to take care of everyone that wanted to be taken care of. And we've always had a very personalised approach. So looking at an initial consultation, so I guess really personalising the program, talking to you about your medical history, your movement history, maybe an injury that you have, how you're feeling, what other things you're currently doing. And then we would create a bespoke program for you. And it was taught to you in a group of 4 people. So always been very intimate. So because of the nature of that, I've always dealt with a lot of injuries. So rehabilitation, prehab, and over the course of obviously taking care of people, making people stronger. I've seen many clients not need to have back surgery because they've been able to build their core strength. Athletes then heard about us. We started taking care of a lot of athletes, and we were just getting more and more inquiries about, I've got this, can you help me? So I created an online platform after that, which is now in 160 countries around the world.
Congrats. And
for me, that took me a long time to get my head around, because that personalization and hands-on teaching and really getting to know your client was so important. But there was such a need for that outside of where our studios were. So I created Fluidform and then at home, and then we tried to make it an in-studio experience at home. So everything I do is about making that platform a version of our in-person studios, but for you at home. So there's personalization. If you have an injury, you can contact us. I have a team of senior instructors and myself that will put together programs for you. So yeah, we're really trying to keep people moving in a great way, just not moving for the sake of moving. So building strength, building muscles, working on their spine and their posture, all those really important things.
Well, congratulations. And it is life-changing, and you speak to my heart when you talk about, seeing people in pain and wanting to help with that. It's one of the drivers of my own work is I can't bear unnecessary suffering. And obviously the lens I look through, everything is firstly nutrition, and I see so much unnecessary suffering coming from people who aren't eating in a nourishing way, and they can be missing out on certain nutrients. And as I have said to you both off air and since we've been sitting here, my latest obsession is iron. And I'm curious, do many of the women perhaps raise in those initial consultations that they've been iron deficient, or that they are? Is it a topic that comes up sometimes in chats?
It does, mainly in pregnancy.
Yes.
Because a lot of Pilates studios, once clients hit 14 weeks, no longer allow them to be within their studios. So we get a very large intake of 14-week plus pregnant clients.
Yes.
So we see it a lot there. More commonly at the moment, there is definitely a rise in young teens. So we have started teen classes, and we're seeing a lot of teen girls, I think, from overtraining. And correct me if I'm wrong, I'm sure you can talk to that, but I feel like that is a big contributor for them with iron deficiency. And they're young, and we're approaching these young girls and boys like they're elite athletes from the age of 9 and 10. And I think, so we're seeing it there definitely. And then obviously the aging population, so the perimenopause, menopause woman, we have a lot of them in our studios. And we're seeing it with the perimenopause. Out of nowhere, the very heavy period begins and they're exhausted. And it's coming back to iron deficiency there too.
Yeah. I concur. And I think in those teenage years, it's often a time, isn't it, where some girls are very motivated by performance and improving athletic ability, and others, it's about body image. And so there can be a real self-restricting of food in some way, which I think sometimes it can be tricky for parents and trainers to kind of spot it, because it sort of, I think, begins like, it looks like they're taking care of themselves and they're taking more responsibility to eat nutritiously. But then before you know it, they're skipping meals or they're obsessed with eating clean. And so, there's if hot chips are offered, they just won't touch it, but it's out of fear, not out of care, that kind of thing. So I worry, I think it's hard enough with our iron requirements, especially being 18 milligrams once we do start to menstruate. I think it's hard enough when we're a robust kind of eater and we're eating for nutrition and satiety. It's hard enough to meet our iron requirements, let alone if we're watching what we eat or restricting in some way. And obviously I think that begins in those teenage years for too many girls.
Yeah, and there's a rise in that at the moment too in the studios. And from my discussions with parents is that obsession with eating. There's too much knowledge, I think, for everyone, and some of it is not great knowledge. And then obviously everyone wants to look and feel good, but in those years, as you said, it does become obsessive. And I think there is a push to, I often see these young girls when they're injured from overtraining.
Yes.
And they feel safe with me and they'll talk to me, and they'll quite often let me in on some things that potentially others around them don't know. But it is that push, we are we pushing our children too much? That's a whole nother conversation. But I think it definitely, that iron deficiency is, it's there.
And I think too, and when obviously you're incredibly educated and you pride yourself on bringing evidence-based training and therapy and support and practices to your work, and I love and adore that about that being a principle for you. I love too that you continue to take care of pregnant women and also women in those postpartum stages, because that's so often a time where I think women are needing obviously more support and it's often missing. So love all of that. one of the things that worries me, and I think you share this, is when there are a lot of people, obviously, and social media gives the whole world access to them, who are probably sharing from a really good place with a place of just wanting to help others, but sometimes they're sharing the information that's made a difference for them, but they don't have any education behind what they're saying. And I worry that things like that that people who aren't necessarily aware of how their words might impact others and lead them to change their diet or change their movement practices. I worry very much that there's not an awareness that a young girl who is, so impressionable might hear that, and then it might lead her to overtrain or undereat. So do you notice that affecting people sort of without the education base, telling people how to move in your world?
Yeah. It's so scary. And it's the reason, almost the sole reason, I created a program recently called Teen Moves for young girls.
Fabulous.
Yeah. So I had mums coming into me saying, I've walked into my daughter's bedroom and she's following something on TikTok about how to get abs in 5 minutes. And then I see her the next day and she's looking in the mirror saying, why haven't I got abs yet? And
Kirsten.
I know. And it happened, sometimes the universe brings you something, and it was emails about, please, I need my daughter to understand healthy, functional movement. I need her to move, but in a supportive way. I need her to move in a non-competitive way. So there was all these messages, and obviously I have 3 young girls and 1 teenager, and it was just something that it isn't there for them. So I created a program online and we launched it recently. But yeah, there is too much bad information out there. And I'm sure people don't intend it to be bad.
I agree.
But like you said, these girls are young, they're impressionable. We don't know, even as a mum, I'll say something sometimes and it's taken in the totally wrong way. So when these young girls are watching social media and watching their friends, or their friends are giving you this information because their friends heard it off some YouTuber, and so let's all do it. It's really scary.
And they're going to listen to you and trust you.
Yeah.
So that's so great that you've created that program. It'll be so well received, I'm sure. Yeah. So tell me too about, I guess, the women you see. I imagine some pretty high achieving, strong physically and emotionally women are kind of drawn to your practices. So tell me what you see often pop up in either with their physicality or with their emotional health, with that, I guess, striving to be, that high achieving person who's really fit and healthy.
Yeah. I mean, it's really interesting. I think at the moment what I'm seeing is that people are wanting things faster.
As in results?
Results faster.
Okay.
Yeah, definitely. But I think everything faster.
Yeah.
I think that's where the results coming faster is coming from. So we now can, use AI to get everything faster. We now can order, you don't even have to go to the grocery store if you don't want to anymore, and you can pay for faster delivery. And so everything is faster. So these women that are high achievers, they're wanting everything else faster. So they want their classes to be shorter. They want to get results. They want to use heavier weights, and they really are trying to dictate the way that they move and train because they're looking for that speed. Our studio is very much a safe space, and there is forward and backwards conversation, and we listen to them and we guide them. And quite often I'll start my class, I'll see someone come in and you can feel their energy like coming out of them, particularly around here if I ask them to lie on their back, around their throat and chest. And I'll go over to them and I'll sit next to them and I'll say, I'm just going to put my hand across your chest. Is that okay? And they'll say, yeah, sure. And I just say, can you inhale for me? And on the exhale, blow all your breath out. And I just press my hand quite firmly down on their sternum. And we do like 3 or 4 deep breaths. And at the end of that, you feel them give in and melt and just be. And so it's really interesting because when you come into a space like that, you might as well not come to your training because you're getting nothing out of it. Your muscles, everything's on high alert. There's so much tension in your muscles that they're not actually working. They're moving, but they're not getting any results. The oxygen is not entering your body. They can't even breathe properly. And so if all I can get them to do in that time is breathe and be and relax, then for me, sometimes that's the best workout they can have. So
I hear you. What a gift.
Yeah.
And you hope they take it home and then perhaps create it as a ritual before bed.
Absolutely. And I think too, people aren't quite often seen anymore because everything is quite fast.
Yep.
So I really make a point in our studios to ensure that people are seen. And so sometimes just a moment like that, or a conversation around how you're feeling, or I'll get them to balance on something, to switch everything off and just, oh, hold on a minute, why can't I stand on one leg? And then all of a sudden they look at you and they think, oh my God, what's happened? I'm losing everything, help me. So, you find your things, but I feel like we're wanting things too quickly. And if we're not getting it in the time period that we've heard on social media or we believe, we're then dropping it and moving to the next thing.
Yeah.
Because there are so many options. And so then we're chopping and changing and nothing becomes a habit. And if there's no habit, there's no result really.
No.
So it's sort of a bit of a crazy wheel of confusion, overinformation, and just too much pace.
Yeah.
So really trying to continue to deliver great functional Pilates in the space that they come into, educate them about what's good for them. And I think that's important. If you keep the education and bringing it back to function and the longevity of their body, I feel like there's little things that spike up in their brain.
Yeah.
Because it is chaotic. You see the clients coming in, too much choice.
and an overwhelming amount of information. And as you say, it can often, I think, lead people to flip from one thing to the next. And I know something you care very much about is consistency and people moving in a consistent way. In things I read about you before I met you, it was something that shone through in all the interviews you've done about how important it is for you to help people to just move each day in a way that, well, just with that consistency. And obviously that's where results come from. And when we want it faster and harder and yesterday, it often means we don't get that, doesn't it?
Yeah, it really does. And the rise in, menopause, perimenopause, strength work. Strength is so important. So then, but also you need to be flexible, but also you need core, and also you need to be outside getting vitamin D, so go for a walk. And so then how do you fit all of that in? Yeah. And then the confusion you almost end up not doing what you were doing before you got all this information.
Yeah.
And this is what I say to my clients now, just do what works for you for now, and then let's look at it. Let's get into that rhythm. Yeah. And then let's add one strength training session a week, or two if that's what you need, if it's a particular focus, because you've been to the doctor and the doctor's looked at your body and your bone density, and this is the plan. So I think we should be moving in consultation with all of our health professionals. That integrated approach is really important for me.
Love that. Do you know something I've seen a lot is women who they really care about, and they've really done their best to obtain a lot of knowledge about how to look after themselves with both food and nutrition, and also with movement. Yeah. And I wholeheartedly agree that a lot of people right now they feel really confused because there's so many things on the list. And I see obviously lots of supplements have their moments of being, they get a light shone on them. And right now it's all about protein and creatine, and I think collagen's probably still in the mix, and magnesium and vitamin D. And what worries me, and I'm not saying there's anything wrong with that, it's just that when the light is shone on those things, we forget about some of the basics, which is partly, I think, what you're saying. And when I get asked about collagen a lot, and it's partly because I'm obsessed with iron, but we can't make the enzyme that allows us to make collagen, which we obviously need for, all the things people want it to work on the outside of their body, but obviously we need it for structural integrity as well. And we need iron to be able to produce collagen. And I worry that with the pushing of just these singular messages, that the whole body picture and also the complexity of nutrition is kind of simple. There's food and there's junk, and we need to eat more food and less junk on a very surface level, but that's ultimately the message. And obviously with a body, we want it to be, it's not my area of expertise. The way I look at it is we want to have a highly functional body across our whole lifespan, which is, again, why I love that functional movement is a theme that you bring to life in so much of what you do. Like, it's obviously a huge consideration. So when I meet women who are very focused on their wellness, they might sort of look like they've got it all together on the outside, or they might feel like they're kind of ticking all the boxes, but women have described to me it's not that they feel hollow on the inside, but they just feel like they have to constantly search for whatever it is. And I think we're seeing that I see it all the time in nutrition, but you're describing that same thing happening with movement of, I feel like I have to do 8 million thousand strength sessions a week to keep up these days. Have you seen that swing towards that with, I think, mostly due to social media?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, it's the hottest conversation.
Is it?
The most asked question. And yes, you do need to do some strength work. You definitely do. But it's all dependent on your body. Like you don't need to be going in to a gym and, weightlifting. You just need to increase the weights that you're using, time under tension. There's, loaded work into the joints. There's all these different conversations you can have around strength. And that's why it's so important to have that 360 approach to movement, because everyone, even though they say they won't, will have a bias. I will probably always bias Pilates slightly more, and someone who's all strength will bias that. So, but together, the outcome should be that we want a well-rounded, functional body. And that's what we're trying to achieve. So, but it is absolutely that. There is so much information around strength. I mean, it was running before that, everyone should run. And then all that was happening was all these terrible Achilles injuries and knee injuries we were seeing. And we see the injuries, which is really interesting. So HIIT was really popular maybe 6 years ago. All of a sudden we had all these injuries come into the studio. And so I can see the patterns from the injuries.
Fascinating.
Yeah, which is what I love. And that's where I then create my at-home programs from. So I'll be in the studios and there'll be a theme and, all of a sudden everyone's tight here. And I'll be like, okay, well, I need to create a program around that for everyone at home as well. And then, so I really use that as my research and education. But yeah, I don't know how many people, if we actually ask them right now, would say, yeah, my program is making me feel amazing. I think they'd say my program is exhausting. I'm not getting through it. And at the end of the week, I'm still tired. And maybe they're tired because their food and their nutrition and their iron is different. This is the thing.
Yeah.
It could have nothing to do with their movement. So again, this is where everything is so overlooked, and you really do need to look at it through every lens.
And we can be just missing some of the basics, I think, right now. Obviously, iron deficiency is the most common nutritional deficiency in the world, and it's being missed. And part of it is we just think that life is busy and every second person's tired. A girlfriend actually went to see her GP recently, and she shared with me, so I said to my GP, I really want to have my iron tested. And the GP said, why? And she said, because I'm absolutely exhausted. And the GP said, everyone is today. And my friend said, that is not helpful. And surely it's not supposed to be that way. And I need a bit more support. But anyway, she did get her iron tested and she was horrifically deficient. Her ferritin was 6, which is through the floor.
I think that's the problem right now. If you asked everyone, that everyone would say they're tired and it's just because life's busy. Why do we think like that? Like
you're not tired. The minute you walked in, I felt your presence, your energy. There was this uplifted feeling in the room. I don't think you can do that if you're iron deficient. Yeah. So not everyone's tired.
But you know what I mean.
Like, I do know what you mean.
Yeah, and that's the thing. Like there are answers for things, and maybe it's not that you're iron deficient. Maybe the way you're training's not right for you.
Yeah.
And that's another thing. I think I have some clients that have done strength work and they have run marathons and they have looked a certain way and are not happy. Yeah. And then they've started Pilates and their body has changed and they feel amazing. And that's the main thing. They feel amazing. You have to feel good.
You do.
Yeah.
And that's what you're seeking. And you can see your face even shifts when you say that. You have to feel amazing. Like it's what you're seeking for your clients to literally experience.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that's beautiful. So I think obviously these days we can all feel a bit of an emotional load kind of trying to hold it all together. And I think, whether it is right from teenage years, across sort of all of adult life, whether it's caring for other people, whether it's young children, teenage children, aging parents, or just our relationships, our friendships in general. Obviously, there can be an emotional, I don't mean load in a bad way, but there's a big emotional factor, obviously, in seeking accurate information and making sure you are well nourished. It all can feel like it's kind of too much, really. And I think body image is a big feature as well that sometimes sits in the background for a lot of women. And I don't know if it's talked about with teenagers, but I think it's still true for a lot of adult women. And I did some interviews. I wrote a book back in 2019 called The Invisible Load, and did some interviews prior to that, focus groups. And for the younger group, the 18 to 25-year-olds, they actually stated that body image and social media were their two biggest stressors. Mm-hmm. And sometimes when I share that with older audiences, they don't necessarily understand certainly how social media can be a stress, because they use it to share photos of their family with their friends in England, or I watch wombat videos. I think wombats are hilarious, but it's not a stress. Whereas I think for younger people, it's a mechanism through which they might be seeking approval, whether they're aware of that or not. And obviously the body image thing can be another big factor in, I guess, the seeking of the approval of others, whether we're conscious of that or not. So do you find it comes up as a topic now for adult women, that whole body image? Is it a conversation, or is it still a bit hidden?
Well, there's a few things. I think it definitely happens postnatally.
Right.
The pressure of the bounce back. Oh. And that comes from Instagram. Like, oh, look at me, I had my baby 7 days ago, and and is that a photo from 7 days? Like, who knows? That's the other thing. But the pressure of the Ozempic and the access. So this is what I'm seeing at the moment in the studios. So there, obviously, people can get these weight loss drugs whether they need them or not now. And this is a real life version of social media and face tuning, because these women aren't getting these bodies through exercise and eating well. They're getting them through, obviously, peptides. And so that is what I'm seeing now, which is sort of scary.
And do you notice changes with their muscle density?
So I'm seeing it from, you can see it a mile away. They disappear from the studio for about 4 or 5 weeks, because they sort of have to get used to taking it, I think, and it can make them feel a little unwell.
Okay.
And then all their muscle wastes away, and they have a particular look about them. Their spines get very sort of like curved and long, and their bottoms sort of fall out of their lower lumbar.
Okay.
So, and then they lose the tone in their legs, and they lose the tone in their arms. They're very thin very quickly, and they have this like gaunt face. So if you weren't aware of that, and you're looking at these ladies and you're thinking, wow, you're in your, and they're older women too, and some of them are taking it through advice from their doctor and taking it the right way. And don't get me wrong, it has had some amazing positive effects on a lot of clients I've seen too. Yeah. And maybe they're microdosing it, and they just needed to mentally as well shift some weight and then they've had this beautiful bounce back, and they're positive, and that's all they needed. So I think like anything, there's way to use things and there's ways not to. But the pressure that the other women that are using it, I guess, for body image are putting on those that aren't using it, I can see that happening, which is, not necessary, because women are already, the load of perimenopause and menopause is huge, and they're emotional, they're tired, they're having an out-of-body experience, they're still doing all their working out, and nothing's happening. If anything, sometimes they can be going in the opposite direction. And it's just that's really interesting at the moment in the studio. But look, body image is there all the time. I think whether we want to admit it or not, I think it's almost like human nature to compare, unfortunately.
And social media's just made it way too easy to do the comparison.
It really has. So, it's interesting at the moment in wellness and fitness in that area. And I've heard of young girls in their 20s who have done telehealth appointments and face tune their body to look bigger than what they are to get access. Oh. Yeah, so it's definitely a thing right now.
That's, fascinating and also deeply concerning.
Very.
When that's happening. Yeah. One of the reasons I wrote Fix Iron First was, I guess, to support women emotionally as well as physically, because I was seeing one of the symptoms of iron deficiency is anxiety. Now, anxiety obviously can be caused by lots of different things, but it is a symptom of iron deficiency and it's being missed. And there was a study published in 2023 called The Psychiatric Manifestations of Iron Deficiency Anemia, and it was looking at people who'd been diagnosed with clinical depression and anxiety, and another condition called ahedonia, which is the inability to feel pleasure, so to feel happy. And they went looking for iron deficiency anemia, the most severe form of iron deficiency in those populations, and it was rife. And when they corrected the iron deficiency, the psychiatric symptoms either improved vastly or in some were completely resolved. And that was a big motivator for me to sort of shine a light on that. And I do worry that a lot of people these days describe themselves as feeling anxious, and there's also the worried well. There's the people, the high achieving sort of people who are pushing for extreme levels of wellness, looking for all sorts of hacks, and there's this underlying anxiety that whatever they do, it's never enough. They're never healthy enough. They almost live like they are sick almost, or they're frightened of that. I'm not quite sure, but anyway, that's probably a conversation for another day. But I think for everyone listening, having awareness that if there is a flat mood, if there is anxiety, if you have had a history of iron deficiency, and also if your recovery from your exercise is not what you imagine it needs to be. So of course it's normal to feel tired at the end of the day. We work hard, we think hard, we might have trained hard, but when the fatigue is persistent and it's never relieved, and then you couple that with some of these emotional symptoms, I guess I'm hopeful that that's a bit of a red flag for women, that they go and have their iron assessed, because it's not going to necessarily fix everything, but that's why I called the book Fix Iron First, because it can be the one thing that does change a lot of things and make us feel like we can. It's almost like we have more resilience and more, not just physical strength, but emotional strength when iron is repleted. So I guess, do you see sort of more of those psychological symptoms coming through? Do people describe, I guess even with the chest example you gave, I mean, that's a classic sort of anxious person's physiology, isn't it?
Yeah, it really is. I think we see it in their inquiry to start. I'm nervous to start. I haven't done this before. Who else will be there? So you can feel it before sometimes, with an initial inquiry. I am seeing it a lot in the more teen area, like the mum saying, my daughter's very anxious, she doesn't do sport at school, this is going to be something that I would like her to try. It's in a small environment. I come here, I've told her how safe it is. So you are definitely seeing it through all age groups in a slightly different way. I think people are becoming more comfortable with saying, I suffer from anxiety, or I'm feeling anxious, or I'm not feeling great today, which is a good thing.
Isn't it?
Yeah, it's a really good thing. So that's a step closer. So if we have that, and then, we have more education around searching for results, just not settling for, I have anxiety and I'm tired all the time, and well, that's all part of it. Well, maybe it's not. And I think it's okay to ask questions.
And see if you can get to the heart of what's behind it, rather than just accepting that it's just how your life is.
Yes.
That's great. What about, I guess I would call this sort of, I don't know, is it a personality type, but I'd call her the strong woman, the one who just feels like she should be able to cope with everything. Do you find she's drawn to your movement, and those women who just think they've just got to push harder and push through, and even when they're injured, that they're kind of agitated that they're injured because they just want to get back to it? Does that show up?
Yeah, it does show up. I think that's it. It's probably the more obsessive personality.
Okay, yeah.
I would call them that type of person. Doesn't, the minute they're worried about the holiday in 2 weeks' time because their routine is going to be disturbed and they won't get to their Pilates sessions, their 4 Pilates sessions, or their daughter's unwell and they miss a session and, well, I haven't exercised this week, I'm going to book in and do 2 back-to-back sessions and things like that. So, you definitely see that type of client wanting, and it's a control thing too. They want to be in control. They want to do their exercises and feel this way and get the results, and tick the box and then move on to the next thing. And they should be getting stronger and they should be doing this, and why can't I do that?
Yeah.
And I think they end up injured too sometimes. They're the ones that push past where they're meant to be. And they're also looking for fast results.
Fast results, faster recovery.
Yeah, faster everything.
Yeah, I very much get that. And so obviously with active people, there can be a higher requirement for iron. We lose iron in perspiration. There can be little micro tears. Certainly for runners, there's foot strike hemolysis where we can break open red blood cells when we're running on hard surfaces. So there's all sorts of different reasons why iron requirements can be higher for athletes' oxygen turnover, obviously. And I do worry that because when people are really focused on their training, they sort of get used to a certain degree of fatigue. I kind of worry about that, and so that they put up with iron deficiency kind of long term. So when a young girl starts to menstruate, I find that more and more young women today, their periods are very, very heavy when it starts. And obviously that can be a kind of almost set like a compounding effect. It often begins in the teenage years and it may or may not get addressed. And then if you then sort of think of that as like a baseline that I think a lot of women live with from the onset of menstruation, whether it's addressed or not, or maybe it's addressed for a year or two and then not again, because it can be hard to meet our dietary requirements across those years, particularly when periods are heavy. And then when we think about you might move out of home and then you're responsible for paying your own bills and cooking your own food. And so sort of the stress hormones creep up a bit, or that might have started when you're at school because you had troubles with your friends, or you put a lot of pressure under yourself academically. So the stress hormones kind of creep up. And then there might be a patch where we don't look after ourselves that well. So we might drink more alcohol, we might be in our 20s and we're drinking more alcohol than we otherwise would. We're living on more takeaway food, so there might be a bit of fat accumulation in the liver, which disrupts all sorts of biochemical pathways. And then with that, periods can become even heavier, and I find that kind of kicks in for women in their 30s, or as you mentioned, sometimes in the perimenopausal transition. And the thyroid obviously needs iron to be able to make its hormones. So it's almost like this compounding effect. And there's this tendency right now that whatever a woman experiences between the ages of about 38 and 55, anything new, she just kind of blames it on perimenopause. And when we say that, I think we're essentially saying whatever we're experiencing must be coming from changes in our sex hormones. And I'm not denying for a second, of course they have an impact. But what I'm curious about is how is it that there are some women who go through their perimenopausal transition with very mild or no suffering, whereas for others it's really debilitating. And I'm wanting to, bring it to women's attention that we want to be looking at blood tests. We want to be looking at their nutritional status, at insufficiencies, because they're so used to just having coffee for lunch, and coffee is not a meal. They're so used to sort of skipping meals, and then they end up in your studio saying, I'm having, a really tricky time through perimenopause and my body isn't responding the way it used to. And there can be all of this stuff in the background being missed. It's almost like once our sex hormones start to change, we sometimes, I think, get an experience of almost what's been there in the background, and the sex hormones have been kind of buffering our experience of the insulin resistance or the thyroid that's not working as well as it once was. So when I'm encouraging women who are listening to this, to really pay attention to their body and use it as feedback. So whether in your world, I would see that as, an injury forces you to pay attention to how you've been living and how you've been caring for yourself or not. And through my nutrition kind of lens, it's the same. So if the persistent fatigue is there, if you've been caring for yourself and let's say you notice that no matter how much sleep you get, the tiredness just doesn't ever end. I just can't encourage people enough to pursue answers to that. It really worries me that right now we're just saying everything is perimenopause when it could be 100 other things.
Yeah.
So obviously perimenopause comes up as a theme in your world as well.
Yeah, it's a big topic right now, and it's a hot topic all of a sudden.
Yeah, it is.
And I think, there's a long list of side effects. The interesting thing in the studio is the time to recover, I see, takes a lot longer.
Okay.
And I wonder if that is that is an iron, maybe another little indicator for some women. Some women are nursing, ankle strains or like bone fractures, stress fractures, problems, and they're all similar injuries, interestingly, that are taking a long time to heal. So that's a really interesting thought process for them. I think for women when they hit perimenopause too, they quite often still have teenage children. Yep. So they are busy, they're mum's taxi. They're still cooking dinner. They're trying to be a great wife. They're still working. And we are almost trained to think that it's normal to feel the way that you're saying week in, week out, month in, month out. So I think it's a great topic to raise and discuss and bring attention to because I would say 9 out of 10 of my clients are talking like that.
Yeah. Yeah. It's what I hear every day. And I worry terribly that people just aren't getting the help that they need. It's just all been blamed on hormones right now, and there can be 4,000 other things in the puzzle. And I don't want that statement to overwhelm people, but it's sort of encouraging people to think my body is this most magnificent vehicle of communication, endlessly offering me feedback about my choices. And instead of seeing it as something that betrays you, if we can see it as our absolute best friend that is just trying to help us tune in. And a beautiful, extraordinary filmmaker I met, he makes nature documentaries and slows the footage down at times so you can see the intricacy of a butterfly's wing or that kind of thing. And when I asked him, gives me goosebumps even saying that, when I asked him what led him down that road, he said, scaremongering doesn't work when it comes to fostering us to take care of things. And he said, I want people to look after the environment and to look after nature and to treasure those moments when they literally see a butterfly, because it's such a precious moment because they don't live for very long. And he said, and I realised that we look after what we care about. He said, so if I can foster some care in people for the environment, then they might care about it a bit better rather than, being threatened that it's, all a disaster. And as I heard him say that, I thought it's almost the essence of what we're talking about. We're trying to get people to just appreciate themselves, care just that little bit more about their amazing selves, because we treat things we care about very differently from things we're frustrated with. And I think, do you see it in movement kind of exercise circles? It's just almost a punishment rather than I treasure you. I want to look after the fact that I can walk from A to B and carry my children and my grandchildren, like appreciating what a functional body gives us.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we have a lot of intimate moments with clients in the studio.
Yeah.
The way in which we teach, there's a lot of hands-on corrections and it's small group, and I think it's what the brand attracts as well. And I often say to people, particularly women, because I think we're meant to be strong, we're meant to be tough, we're there to look after our children, look after our partners, and we're so resilient to a fault, I think. And when you get to a certain age, it's just not in you anymore to think about yourself. And I say to my clients, if this was your daughter or son coming to you and saying, I feel this way, firstly, how would you speak to them? Because we speak to ourselves like, oh, you're just tired. You had a big day yesterday. Get up out of bed and keep going. How would you talk? And then what advice would you give? And if we think about that, if we step out of our own shoes and into our children's shoes, our mum's shoes, our best friend's shoes, and we treat ourselves in that way, I think we'd be a giant step forward in a lot of those things, as you just mentioned. Just even the self-love component of it. But coming back to the body, our body is our most precious thing we own, isn't it? Like without it, we are not here. And I feel, so privileged to look after people's bodies. They allow me to teach them, fix them, touch their body. So that's a real privilege for me. And if their body was their Ferrari car and there was a weird noise inside it, or one of the tires was a little bit flat, or something that, you know, is so precious to them, you would go and get it fixed. You'd go and get it tuned up. And that's the human body. You know, those finely tuned pieces of machinery out there are no different to our bodies.
Yeah.
So if something doesn't feel quite right, there's usually a tinker, isn't there?
That's right.
And and that's what I say to the clients. You know, your big toe shouldn't be hurting like that. Oh, it's just my big toe. No, well, if it was your car and it was a tire, you'd go and get it fixed straight away. So I think we do, with our bodies, we do have to be kinder to them, and we do need to listen, because the best, I've heard this before, the best pharmacist you will ever have is inside of you.
Mm.
And
I agree.
So we have to get better at being kinder and looking in and listening, and then taking action.
Exactly. It's almost like when something bubbles, it's like there's this voice inside us that has our back, and it knows what we need to do and what we need to eat, and when it's time to go to bed, and when it's time to get off our emails, and when it's time to do a lovely long slow exhale and drop our shoulders, because they've been up around our ears half the day, and all of that gorgeous wisdom is inside of us. And I worry very much that we ignore it, we tune out, or we've been taught not to trust it, and we forever look sort of outside of ourselves for more. And that's partly what we touched on earlier, that there's this world of confusion right now as people seek, you know, more information because they think they don't have enough, that then leads to almost like this overload. And we can end up, certainly through the, you know, my iron deficiency lens, you know, you can end up going down a road of unintentional lifestyle steps that lead you to become very depleted in not just iron, but all sorts of other minerals especially. So it might be that coffee, or there's a real matcha craze right now, all of that can disrupt iron absorption. So if you're having iron-rich foods or an iron supplement at the same time that you're having your coffee or your matcha, it can be a big disruptor. Or you might be so on the go that you're just grabbing, a coffee for lunch or banana bread on the go. You're going to be iron deficient if you do that consistent, one-off, doesn't matter. But if you live like so many of our food habits, I think are, you know, we consistently do them. We grab this for brekkie or skip breakfast, or we have this for lunch, or, you know, just grab a coffee for lunch, whatever it is. And then obviously there might be a focus on eating light or just living on salads because people think, you know, because they're trying to change their body shape and size, or there might be, you know, there's been a big rise in popularity of vegan eating. And I think for some people that comes from a very deep, intentional place inside of themselves, whereas for others it's a fad. And my job when I was working one-on-one with people, you can very much feel when it's a truth for the person versus when it's something they're doing because their best friend started doing it and they felt a bit of pressure to go there themselves. So I think there's all these unintentional lifestyle kind of hacks or trends that people can adopt that lead them to become iron deficient. And also I worry that particularly for women who are really committed to their training, there is a protein that the liver makes called hepcidin that actually, when it goes up, it blocks iron absorption. It's naturally lower in the morning, so our iron absorption is better in the morning, but it will elevate after exercise. And so if someone is listening to this and they find out they are iron deficient and want to address it, sometimes just little tweaks to these lifestyle things, even if it goes against something that you've heard on Instagram, can make a difference. So iron-rich foods in the morning, you'll absorb them better actually than at night. Having iron-rich foods or an iron supplement away from tea and coffee or matcha, better absorption. And they can just be little tiny tweaks like that that can just make such a difference. But obviously, awareness comes first. So I feel that there's, with all this trend-based stuff, whether it's, you know, trends in exercise where you can see, I find it fascinating that you can see the patterns of injuries, and I see these trends in nutrients where some of these real basics are being missed. So it's but all of it, you know, it can, to shine a light back on the body and allow it to guide the person. And even just like sitting with you and chatting with you, your depth of care is very palpable. So it's not, your work is not just what you've chosen, you know, to do with your day-to-day stuff. It's like it's in you. And when you speak about, you know, putting your hand on someone's chest and the difference that makes. And the word you used earlier was privilege. You feel like it's a privilege to be invited into their world, to support them, to tune into their earth suit and help them kind of, live in a more robust way. It's they're very lucky to have found you, and So when it comes to, I guess I want to round back to the teenage girls and do you remember your own teenage experience?
I do.
Oh yeah?
Yeah. I suffered from really heavy periods. I was quite active and chronic fatigue.
Okay.
And was iron deficient.
Okay.
Yes. And I don't think from memory, I'd have to check with my mum because she'll remember. I'm pretty sure it was after the chronic fatigue that they then tested my iron. So that was, and that was for a good couple of years. It took me to get my energy back because with the chronic fatigue, I didn't feel like eating.
Yep.
And so then I wasn't eating properly, obviously, nutrient-dense food. I definitely stopped exercising like I did. But then, the iron deficiency, I remember the constipation with the iron supplement at the time, which I think is something I hear a lot of, in conversations that people are like, I don't want to take an iron supplement because this is what happens.
That was why I developed Iconic Iron, just for the record, because it's all made from peas and it's not constipating.
Yeah,
but it's very
that was
common,
a thing, wasn't it?
Very much.
A long time.
Very much.
Yeah. So, that was, and I definitely wasn't as active as my own girls are now. Like I feel like children today are so active. They are doing hours and hours and hours of extra co-curricular activities, which are usually movement-based, on top of going to school. And so, I really hope that the whole topic around iron deficiency becomes more and more prominent for these young girls. And obviously for my own girls, I'll be well aware of it. But it was definitely something for me back then. And I think probably maybe not, I grew up always a healthy eater, but probably not enough information back then around how much, we didn't have information around you should be eating this much of this and this much of that. It was sort of the healthy food pyramid. And actually when you look back of it, it's not that healthy, that pyramid. It was full of carbs and it's almost been flipped on its head now.
Yeah.
So, it's so interesting how over time, we are becoming more educated and we know more information. But again, maybe too much information, or we know all this information, but we don't really understand it. And what does that mean for me? I think that's the trap we're in at the moment.
What does that mean for me is a big one.
Yeah.
I agree.
Yeah.
Sometimes I think it's the we might have lots of knowledge, we're not necessarily applying it. One point you made earlier was, we can obtain information, but we don't necessarily act on it. And it's kind of wasted if it just sits with us. So it's a bit of a witch's cauldron right now with lots of information, lots of confusion, but then there can also be, a real lack of action. You're fortunate, obviously, to have great care when you're a teenager and that the iron deficiency was actually found and then you had the opportunity to address it, because I think it's missed a lot now. It was, when I was growing up, there was a bit more attention on it. I remember being taken to the GP to get a blood test after the onset of menstruation. It was just kind of a lot more of what was done back then. And it's just being missed right now. So I appreciate you sharing that personal story, because any mothers who are listening, if they have teenage daughters and they notice their periods they can be very heavy, particularly in the beginning. They often write themselves, but in the beginning they can be very heavy. And if that's kind of coupled with a super active lifestyle or any kind of restrictive eating, it's certainly something to be tested and to watch out for. Yeah,
definitely. Our young girls are under pressure from every angle of their life. Stress as well, from social media, just from keeping up at school, academic, food, what they should be eating, what they shouldn't be. So it's, I think, to watch that in our children, to make sure that they don't lose their sparkle, because they shouldn't lose their sparkle so young, should they? There's a reason they're not smiling and jumping. And yes, I think for young girls who get their periods, it's quite often put down to, your daughter's just in year 9 or your daughter's just got her period, or your daughter this, your daughter that. It's very much in a pigeonhole of that's normal.
Yes.
But like your own body, you know your daughter's bodies.
Yes.
You can feel when something's not right. I can definitely feel it with my girls. They get in the car straight away and I'm like, what's wrong? And they're like, nothing, Mum. And I'm like, no. I'm not driving. What's wrong? And then it just comes out.
Aren't you gorgeous?
And keeping that conversation going with them too.
Yes.
Because they don't know.
No.
They don't know how they feel. It's all new for them. Yeah.
And I think too, helping everyone from teenagers right through to, women of all ages and men who you're working with to understand even kind of what healthy fatigue is versus almost a biochemical or nutritional depletion, because you described the chronic fatigue syndrome kind of situation where obviously the fatigue is so deep and so persistent. It's way more than just I worked hard yesterday, so the tiredness kind of makes sense and I've had a sleep and I feel much better today. It's kind of never ending. So I like to give people about a 2-week cutoff. If the fatigue is persistent beyond about 2 weeks, it's worth investigating.
Okay, that's great.
And
2 weeks.
And a reflection on everything from your stress to your movement to your meals to is it time to actually pop off to the GP and have some blood tests done and actually know what's there. So it's almost like a little touch point. People get frustrated by the persistent fatigue, but it's just an offering of information, I think.
Yeah, at the studio, I'm always talking to people about their hydration levels and their sleep, and I guess those common things, their food and are they eating, and, fasting was a big thing for a while. Are you fasting? Are you not fasting? Is it right for you? Is it not right for you? And encouraging them to seek other advice and to keep a little notebook, of their sleep and of their water intake is something that we encourage in the studio. And sometimes just that, like if you're tired today, out of 10, put a score down. And like you said, if in 14 days, because if it's there, it sort of jumps out at you a little bit more.
That's right.
You write it down.
Yeah.
Like don't put it in your phone, just write it on a little piece of paper next to your bed. But yeah, that's 14 days. That's a good tip.
Yeah, I feel like that's little cutoff, little moment. And then too, when people go and have blood tests, obviously ferritin is, and again, this is just for people listening so they have a reference point. Ferritin is our iron storage, and it's one of the tests that they'll do when they test iron studies. And for adult women in Australia, the normal range is 20 to 220 micrograms per litre. But my worry with that is I meet a lot of women who'll test at, say, 22 and they're told they're fine. But there's very good research, there's very strong literature showing that when ferritin is less than 50, there will usually be fatigue. There often won't be enough iron to supply all the processes inside of us that it's needed for. You might start to notice more anxious feelings, lower mood, irritability, less patience. Some women really notice it in kind of how they show up and kind of handle life. It's more like that. It can sometimes also, of course, be fatigue. Other women will notice there's more hair coming out in the shower when they wash their hair. The way you know with that is your part gets wider. So I think it's great to get copies of blood test results so you can see where you're at, because I think there is a difference between our normal ranges and optimal ranges. I like ferritin to sit between 50 and 150 micrograms per litre for women to feel their best. Think of it like a backup battery. And then transferrin is another little measurement, and it's a sign of iron hunger. So the normal range is 2 to 3.6 grams per litre. But once it gets above about 2.5, 2.6, it's the body seeking more iron. So particularly for your very wellness-focused, fit clientele, I think knowing a yearly iron blood test is very helpful, and trying to optimise that is incredibly helpful. And I do see a difference when women do that, particularly through the perimenopausal transition. I get asked a lot by women who aren't in perimenopause yet, what can I do to make sure it's a gentle transition for me? And that robust iron status I think is a big part of that. And one of the reasons I wanted to have these conversations was to essentially help women take better care of themselves, but also to kind of get just a little bit more of that detail with their care so that they can optimise. Yeah.
And do you think doing that leading into perimenopause, it really helps in that transition?
Hugely.
Yeah, well, that's something that everyone needs to. Yeah, that's amazing. Can I ask you a question about?
Of course.
So I've had a number of clients have blood transfusions.
Iron transfusions?
Yeah, iron transfusions.
Yes.
Yeah, versus, so at what point is that something you would do versus taking a supplement?
I love that. You're so gorgeous to ask me that. So the iron infusions, and we're very lucky to have access to, I see it almost like emergency medicine. They can save lives. Yeah. So not taking away from the power of them at all and their ability to recover someone's iron status very, very quickly. Mm-hmm. My concern is I meet women who don't worry about what they eat. They just get 2 iron infusions a year. Oh. That is not a good way to live because you spend so much time on the downhill slide. There's different degrees of iron deficiency, depletion, deficiency, and then anemia. Mm-hmm. So you spend a lot of time in the downhill part where your body's not getting all the iron that it needs for all its crucial processes. Mm-hmm. The other thing too with an infusion is it's just iron, and there's so much more to iron metabolism once it's inside of us. So copper is really crucial for iron to be able to be put into storage. Vitamin A is crucial for iron to be able to come out of storage. So you get, with an infusion, you get delivered this huge dose of iron, and it's not coupled with we don't need a lot of copper, but we need copper for that healthy metabolism and the vitamin A. So all the other things that iron needs to do its magnificent work inside of us isn't in that infusion. It can drive inflammation in a lot of people. So some people notice they kind of go to bed for 2 or 3 days after an iron infusion, joint pain, nausea. So there can be that real inflammatory response. And so I'm not taking away from how helpful they can be if you do suddenly find out your iron is through the floor. Mm-hmm. But I would much rather address what's happening in the person's lifestyle and address that. Are periods really heavy? Let's see if we can, why is that? Let's see if we can lighten them to correct it that way. Mm-hmm. Are you just not eating enough iron-rich foods? Let's see if we can address your dietary intake or move your coffee to mid-morning away from your breakfast so your absorption's better from your breakfast. Or are you taking one of those old school supplements that drives constipation, and because you'd rather be iron deficient than constipated, you don't take it every day? So try iconic iron. It's not constipating. The absorption and recovery of your iron status is really quick. So I would rather address it from a lifestyle perspective so that we don't need the infusions essentially, but they can be life-saving.
Yeah, it's interesting because going back to that client or that person who wants everything fast, I am hearing more often than not about the iron infusion. So that's really...
It's another, really just give it to me now.
Yeah,
give it to
me
fast.
What I mean. Yeah. And not often right.
And not necessarily addressing why it's arisen in the first place, and that's where I think some of the beauty of life is in those details. When we start down a wellness path in whatever modality we're drawn to. So if someone is drawn to go and have an in-studio experience with you, or they're drawn to embrace your at-home program, I like to sort of say to people, just trust that you've been drawn to that, trust that you've been guided to that, and give it a go, because you don't know that you don't just get a stronger, more functional body out of it. You might meet new friends, or it might be that you have a conversation with someone there that sparks you off in a whole new direction with your work, or your friends are meant to be your children are meant to be best friends. Or I just feel that when we sort of trust that little inner guidance of, I feel so drawn to Kirsten and her work, you're going to get so much more out of it than just a fitter, stronger body. Do you know? And I love watching how life unfolds like that.
Absolutely. Our path is already there. We have to walk on it and trust it.
And to think that you came to create Fluidform from an injury, which I'm sure at the time was, they're frustrating. They're such a pest. They stop us doing what we want to do. And yet one of I'm sure there's lots of gifts in your life, but one of them is the work you've created. And that initial suffering led you to find Pilates and now to do what you do in the world. So, do you reflect on that sometimes?
Yeah, I definitely do. Like I said, I feel super fortunate to have the job that I have. It is about making people feel better in both emotionally and physically. It improves their family lives. There's just so many positives around what I'm able to bring to people. And then that connection piece where you're connecting with people. Some people need that connection. Some people have no connection at home. So there's an element of it which is just like so special for those clients and for me. And yeah, I'm super grateful to do what I do and feel privileged to look after people's bodies. And yeah, I do think about it a lot.
It shines out of you. And then to think that, you know, as your girls begin to head into their teenage years, and now you have this beautiful offering for teenage girls to better support them. Remind me of the name of that program.
Teen Moves.
Love it.
Yeah. Yeah. It's probably been like a career highlight, to be honest. Just to be able to deliver a program. We held an event. We had 160 teens at it in Sydney. They were just there, smiling, moving, doing Pilates. They just loved every minute of it. I get messages from mums saying, I just walked down into the kitchen and my daughter's in her undies over the Fluidform ball doing a class on the TV. You know, like it's just, if that's all I do, then I am so happy because it's just, you know, I know myself, we know how we feel when we move, and that regular movement for our young girls in a healthy way, it just sets them up for, you know, such a great path ahead.
It does. And yeah, thank you for bringing that into the world. I think too, remembering that, I guess being wellness aware doesn't guarantee biochemical or nutritional sufficiency. I think that's been a theme of what we've talked about. I think another theme of what we've talked about has been encouraging women to really tune into their body and see it as this magnificent vehicle of communication, offering them feedback and trusting themselves more. I think that's been another theme of our chat today. And then if you were to offer some closing words, either of wisdom or insight or just something that is, that you really care about right now. I know the teen thing is a big one, but
I think for women out there, because, you know, they are so amazing, that when things do start to go a little bit off track, that it's not failure. You know, I feel that in women. So, you know, whether you are iron deficient, whether you have every symptom of perimenopause, whether you do get an injury, where you're just not feeling great, you're feeling tired, all of those things are not a failure. They're just another step, another piece in the puzzle. And to continue to look inward and talk to yourself like you would those that you love. Yes. And don't wait for tomorrow to take action.
Love that. Thank you so much for joining me, Kirsten, and for sharing your gorgeous self with everyone. I hope that it's been really, really helpful to everyone who's tuned in. And as we've talked about a lot, if there's something that's bubbled to the surface for you, I hope that that's happened. And if something has bubbled to the surface, I hope that you'll take action on that. And please remember to live every day in touch with how precious life is and how precious you are, and treat yourselves accordingly. Thank you so much for being here.